Hi, I'm Gabe Cohen with American Krav Maga, and today I have my guest, Rick BLITSTEIN, with us. Um, we are in Albuquerque, New Mexico at Duke City Krav Maga. The head instructor here, school owner, is Scott Mitchell, and we have a great seminar coming up this weekend that Rick is conducting, and we're here to ask Rick some questions in reference to his Krav Maga history. As I understand it, you met Imi or took an instructor course in 1981 with Imi. Can you tell me something about that?
I met Imi originally in Israel in 1977 when I first got exposed to Krav Maga, which was a brutal experience.
Was it?
Yes.
How so?
I had grown up in America doing kung fu and boxing and street fighting, and I was living in Israel on a kibbutz named Ein Chorod Miyuchad. And I used to practice my kung fu. I would go out and do my kung fu forms. And one day, some Israelis that I had met working asked me, "What are you doing?" I said, "Kung fu." And they said, "What would you do against this or that?" And a knife and a stick. And they just beat my butt. And I said, "What is this?" And at the time, they didn't even use the terminology Krav Maga. They said, "Oh, this is what we learn in the army." And I started learning from them. And I later found out that they were all in top commando units. They were very experienced fighters. And I learned this was something called Krav Maga, and I started to train whenever I could with them. And they invited me to go to another location one time for a big training session where they seemed to have singled me out to pick on me and really beat me up in front of these three old men. And one of the old men was Imi Lichtenfeld, the Grand Master of Krav Maga. And they introduced me to Imi, and he said, "Listen," he says, "you have the heart of a fighter, but you don't know what the hell you're doing in real fighting." So he said, "Do you want to learn?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." You know, and I started to learn under his tutelage in Israel.
And that was 1977.
77, 78, 79, he came with his top students to America. I met him in America. He did the first ever promotional tour of Krav Maga.
And that was at Jewish community centers, is that correct?
In most Jewish, not all, but most Jewish community centers around the U.S., several. I met him in Cleveland, where I used to live. And he met my father for the first time. And they ended up becoming very good friends. They were both war veterans, and they used to share war stories. And two old characters, may they both rest in peace.
Yes.
Imi asked my father if he would let me come back to Israel to go through the first ever instructor course, which I did in 1981. We spent the whole summer in Israel. It was, as I recall, 6 weeks. 6 days a week for at least 6 hours a day.
Wow.
And then some weekends we would have Shabbat off, like half a day Friday and Saturday. We would travel, or I would go see my relatives in Israel. But some weekends we just couldn't get enough, so we would stay in Netanya, and we would go to Eli Afik's house school, may he rest in peace also. And that's where all the black belts of Krav Maga used to train on Saturdays. Yep. So even though we trained all week, sometimes we would look forward to go there to get our butts whipped just so we can see what they were doing and say, "I'm going to move like that one day."
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, it was great.
It was a great experience.
Great experience. And then we brought Krav Maga to the United States.
And was that the goal for the 1981 instructor training, bringing
That
some
was the
American
goal,
students
to
over?
bring Krav Maga to the United States, to introduce it, because literally no one knew what it was at all. I would say Krav Maga, they thought it was Thai food, or they had no idea what it was. And I would go to tournaments, karate tournaments and other things. I would demonstrate. I started to teach, and people started to see what it was and the difference, and it's been a long journey since.
So that was, let's say the instructor training was 1981. It's now 2017, almost 18. What, 36 years?
Yes.
When you look at the Krav Maga community today, did you ever envision what it is today? And when I say what it is, What do you think about what it is? What's your comments on Krav Maga today?
Yes, it's interesting. We had these discussions with Imi years ago, and he knew it was going to happen for good and for bad, but he was accepting of it, meaning he knew that the martial arts community would eventually come around and recognize Krav Maga for the genius that it is, being that he developed Krav Maga with one thing in mind: self-defense. A lot of martial arts have gotten away from self-defense, and he knew that because Imi was an experienced martial artist, and he realized a lot have become sport, a lot have become show, more acrobatics and for show. It looks good, but will it really work in self-defense? No. Imi's objective was to make a system that worked. Don't forget, he developed this technique for the Israeli military. So it had to be effective and work and not a sport. Then he watered it down for civilians, but with the same premise: anyone should be able to do it. It shouldn't matter if I'm small and you're big, or if she's a woman against a big guy. She should be able to defend herself. That's why he studied the techniques and improved the techniques, evolved, so things work in a functional manner for everyone, not just for the chosen few.
So this was originally created, Krav Maga, for the Israeli Defense Forces.
Correct.
Who, in 1948, put Imi in charge of physical training and self-defense training. Is that correct?
Correct. He had a background in Slovakia of boxing, wrestling, judo, gymnastics, and he always liked us to say ballroom dancing. He was very proud of that achievement.
Wow.
And then his history was a long one. He escaped Europe. He made his way to North Africa, where he joined the British Army, the Czech regiment of the British Army. He fought there. Then he had nowhere to go. His home was occupied. He lost his whole family, later found out in the Holocaust. The British gave him permission to go to what was then called Palestine, today Israel, where he had no money. He couldn't speak the language. He couldn't work. So what did he do? He fought anyone and everyone on the beach for money. Bare knuckle fighting. Bare knuckle fighting. And he started to get a little bit of a reputation of who is this guy?
Yeah.
And the Jewish underground came to see him and meet him, and he became involved with the Jewish underground. And then when Israel was getting ready to declare independence, they were already fighting for their existence. They knew they were going to have a fight of existence on their hands, and they needed to come up with something quickly that could get people in combat fighting condition,
right,
and get them as combat soldiers. So they gave Imi the task. And it was a big task because some were civilians in good shape, but a lot of them were Holocaust survivors, broken down people, spirited, heart, their physical conditioning. He had to get them in shape and make them a fighting army. And he did, and they won.
Amen. Not an easy task.
No.
You had told me, if you don't mind commenting on, before Imi escaped Bratislava, thank you. He was teaching his friends how to defend themselves. Is that correct, in their community? Because the rise of anti-Semitism,
yes,
Nazi youth.
He had a background, like I say, in sport fighting, as well as some of his friends. And his country was aligned with Germany. So even before World War II started, they had discrimination and anti-Semitism on all levels already in his country, because his country was the fastest country, you see. So, for instance, Jews had lived there for several thousand years. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, they were being stripped of their real estate and of their belongings. They were told that they couldn't function in jobs they had functioned for years. They were,
Public office.
yeah, they were being discriminated against in a way that pre-Holocaust, because who could ever imagine what was coming? No one ever imagined such a horrible thing. But so Imi and some of his buddies would go out and street fight the Nazis, and they would make sure older Jews could get home from synagogue at night or during the day. They would walk them home, and we have actually documented articles from newspapers from Bratislava, 1938-39,
Wow.
where they talk, and Imi's in some of the articles. One specific one we had translated from Slovak to English, where it says that they were walking home from school and a bunch of brown shirts were the Nazis, chased them and ganged up on them and were street fighting them, and Imi was a fighter, so he knocked some of them out, and then he was on top of one beating him. And the guy started yelling, "Don't beat me this way, don't beat me this way, I'm not a Jew." And Imi said, "But I am." Boom! This is a famous story, and it was documented. But he had to escape because once the war broke out, they wanted him.
He was a wanted man.
He was a wanted man.
For his activity?
Yes, and he escaped on a boat called the Pencho, which is a whole other documented story. Over 500 people bought a river paddle boat, like you see on the Mississippi River. It used to go on the Danube River. Bratislava's on the Danube River. So they bought this boat Imi was on, and they had to pay off every port to go through. And then at one point, the propeller of the boat stopped working, so Imi, being the athlete that he was, dove overboard, and he started to go underneath and pull out garbage to free the propeller. Excuse me. But because of that instance, he ended up getting a bacterial infection in his ear. And then they were on the boat with no medicine. And then the boat came out into the Adriatic Sea and was shipwrecked on an island. Limited food, everything. So Imi again and some of his friends, with his ear inflamed, I can't imagine the pain, took a rowboat out into the ocean looking for help. And a British military destroyer found them, and they directed them back to the island. So all these people were put into an encampment for the rest of the war because the British wouldn't allow them to go to Palestine. They had a quota on Jews, but they were saved though. And Imi, because of his inner ear infection, the British took him to Alexandria, Egypt, where he went through 3 operations, and they literally had to graft bone from his face, and the rest of his life, the left side of his face, he couldn't blink. And he had somebody who looked like a stroke victim. Their face dropped. So all his life he was a very handsome kid, extremely handsome, a ladies' man, and now he looked grotesque. So from that point on, if you ever see Imi posing for pictures, he always went like this and posed his right side, but you could see his left side was drooping. And in certain circles, they called him the man with the twisted face. And his eye used to water up with tears because he couldn't feel.
Oh, it wouldn't blink.
And he couldn't blink. So he always would have a napkin, and he would go like this, or we would do it for him.
That's sweet. Yeah. He sounds like he was a great man. Would you like to speak on his character at all, as far as, how did he treat his students?
Imi was a special man.
And his sense of humor?
Very special man. He, athletically, he was a superior athlete. His father made him that way. He grew up doing that. So he was very gifted athletically. Even as an older man, he could do things young people couldn't do. His personality was unique. He was a funny, funny man. He loved to make people laugh and feel good about themselves. He would always make people feel good about themselves. And it's true to this day. I meet people that tell me, oh, they met Imi once, or here or there with me, or 40 years ago, and everybody says the same thing. They never forgot it. He had a way, if you met him for 5 minutes, you would never forget those 5 minutes the rest of your life. I don't know what it was. He had a way of teaching, but of learning. He would make you feel like you were the teacher sometimes. And he would thank you for teaching him things. You didn't know you didn't even know what you taught him, but he would know. He became sick as an older man. When I would go see him, he would say sometimes, let's go learn something today. And we would go near his house. There was a children's playground. And we would watch children. And he said that a lot of his development of Krav Maga was watching children, because children are unpolluted in their movements. They move naturally. And I remember we were watching, these kids were throwing a ball, and the kid threw a ball at another kid, and he didn't know it, and he went, whoa! And he said, look, inside defense. You see, Pop? Right. He says, you see, they do the things that are natural. Yeah, so he would go and he would study children. Wow.
You're lucky to have had that experience.
Very lucky.
You know, with what you see today, I know as a small business owner, I started teaching Krav Maga. I thought this is wonderful, and it kind of it was a link back to my heritage, the Jewish people, and of course it's not just for Jews. Imi wanted it to be for everybody. It's a way for people to defend themselves, and
he was very, very adamant about that. He actually said many occasions that Krav Maga was a tool or a road for Israel and the Jewish people to make friends of non-Jews. Mm-hmm. And he was very adamant about that. He says, Krav Maga is not just for Jews. It came from him, it came from a heart, but it's not just for Jews, it's for everyone who wants to learn self-defense. But they must respect us too. They're not. But he said, if we can make friends through Krav Maga, non-Jews around the world, it's better for Israel, it's better for the Jewish people. And by coming here, in my first time in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in a Krav Maga school, and to see an Israeli flag and an American flag, it goes to show that we did something right.
Excuse me. Man, I'm at a loss for words. This is very, very moving.
It's interesting.
To me.
I mean, back to your basic question, where I have mixed emotions, because it's
in reference to what we see today in Krav Maga community.
Yes. First of all, with me, Krav Maga is not just a small business or a big business; it's personal. I knew Imi 20 years. He was my mentor.
Yes, sir.
He was my father's best friend. We spent a lot of personal time together.
If I may, your father was a U.S. war veteran.
Correct.
That was in World War II and the
Correct.
D-Day. And
correct. Him and Imi used to share war stories and
became good friends.
and things, and they learned from each other. Imi always learned from everything. He was the Grand Master, but he would learn from everybody. That's why he was the Grand Master. Mm-hmm. And he was nice, respectful to people. One time we were driving in New York, and I honked the horn, and he slapped me. He says, you're gonna make the people nervous, and you're gonna cause an accident for them. Relax, have patience. He was very conscious of people like that. But again, I have mixed emotions, because again, for me, it's personal.
Tell me what you see today.
And again, we had this conversation, Imi and I, and he knew it was going to become popular, because again, he believed that a lot of the martial arts had lost the self-defense aspect, that were really the reason for martial arts to begin with.
Right.
So he always said Krav Maga the premise has to be self-defense. Not showboating, not self-defense.
Not an aerobics workout.
Yes. So it's become very popular this way. Now, with the other hand, there is no one governing body of Krav Maga. Even in Israel, when Imi was still alive, a lot of his top students branched out on their own. You had a lot of ego there, okay?
Sure.
And nobody wanted to be under each other. So they all, like we say, in America, there's a lot of chiefs and not a lot of Indians. So for good or bad, it hurt Imi though. I'll be honest with you, it hurt him because they were like his children. Imi never had his own children. We were his children. And to see his children fight amongst each other and this one open up this school and not have anything to do, it hurt him. He didn't want to see that, but he also understood why. And he understood some of the good things that would come of that would be that if not one person or one entity controlled Krav Maga, but many, Krav Maga would evolve in many different directions. Not for good or bad, but it was still, Krav Maga is an evolution. It's not a stagnant martial art.
Sure.
So we have to evolve. But by having so many organizations and this one and that, it evolves in different ways. So like you say, an analogy would be, there's a big tree, strong tree of Krav Maga. There's many branches now, okay? And the branches have leaves and flowers, and it's good to see. It's become popular all over the world. There's Krav Maga everywhere. Every country I go, there's Krav Maga. Some of them good, bad. It doesn't matter. There's still Krav Maga, and in that way, it's successful. Okay? It's really blossomed like that, and in that way, I would say it's successful. On the other hand, because there is no governing body, and because of now social media, I believe the quality in many places is not what it should be. I believe people become instructors. Things have changed in my life, but back in the day, if you wanted to be a black belt, given, 10 years minimum. Nowadays, I get phone calls. How much does it cost to become a black belt? You got the wrong number. 3 years, can I become a black belt? No. Maybe some other guy, not for me. I'm old school that way because there's so much to learn in Krav Maga. People just don't understand. But,
no, I appreciate that, the candidness. And
listen, I don't talk bad about anybody.
Right. We're not talking about anybody specific.
To all. But in my opinion, some people have cut it short to make themselves look bigger, and they put videos on YouTube and Facebook, and some of the videos are good, a lot of them are really not good. I find myself and some of my other students have to now, let's say, clean up the mess of other Krav Maga, because for instance, we get called in to teach a government entity or a military entity, and they say, we've seen Krav Maga, it's no good. And I say, who did you see it from? Okay, give me 5 minutes, let me show you. And I show them, and they're like, wow, this is what we want. I said, thank you. Okay, and I'm not making myself a big shot. On the contrary, I just did what I'm taught. Absolutely. Okay. But a lot of people are doing things wrong, giving themselves also titles that they have no reason to wear this title. They go around teaching, they think they're qualified to teach professionals. They're not professionals themselves. And what happens is it gives the whole system a bad name. And then you have this organization fighting with that. But listen, it's happened with many, many other martial arts. I know for a fact. I'm friends with a lot of the Gracie family from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's happened in their family between cousins. And yeah, so, it's when human nature becomes involved with martial arts. And business. Right. People do things to make money for marketing. They want to make themselves look more than what they are because it's going to make them more money. Yeah. I gotcha. Right. It is what it is. You can't stop that. And I don't want to stop that, But it is what it is. But I just don't want the reputation of Krav Maga to sacrifice or suffer from this.
Sure.
And that's what's happened.
Do you feel personal responsibility to?
Ooh, absolutely. More, I would say more than I should, but I absolutely do.
It's a part of who you are, right?
I would sit here like this and talk with Imi about this, about like we are now.
Wow.
How could I not?
Yes, sir.
Oof. You know, and Imi never put his name on anything, you know? Now
you told
have,
me you didn't even charge for belt tests to his top students at the time. It wasn't about money. The
wasn't
original
about money.
organization was nonprofit, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, Imi, you know, we would do anything for one time me and Alan Feldman were in New York and Philadelphia with Imi demonstrating and teaching. All he wanted was knockwurst. That's it. Not Imi, what can we pay? I want knockwurst. Okay, so first it sounds easy. Find knockwurst in Philadelphia. It took us all day, but we went here. Imi, look at the menu. What's this? Hot dog. Right? Can't do it. Let's go here. Bratwurst. It's not knockwurst. Imi, let's go. Let's find. We had to please him, but we found him knockwurst.
Nice. That's funny.
Funny.
Yes, sir. So with what you have said about the different Krav Maga organizations out there today, or Krav Maga in general, I want to bring it back to Imi being in charge of the Israeli Defense Forces, and may he rest in peace, he's no longer with us, but Israel's still using Krav Maga, and everybody has to serve in the military, men and women.
Correct.
You know, you've been a part of the man that created this system for the state of Israel. I mean, what a huge responsibility and task.
Even within the military, because I was, as you know, I just came back from Israel.
You've got students that serve.
I've
right?
got students, family. One of my students is a Krav Maga instructor of Lotar, which is the Israeli Special Forces Counter-Terror School, which is like graduate school for special forces dealing with counterterrorism, the top of the top. And my student is an instructor. I'm very proud of him. I go there, I see him, and these are the elite. So I've got to see some really cool stuff.
You were just in Israel, weren't you?
I was just in Israel with them, and the way it works is this: most soldiers learn very little Krav Maga in basic training. Soldiers are issued a rifle. So your rifle becomes your best friend. You're responsible for that rifle 24 hours a day. So you're taught more if someone attacks you how to use the rifle to block and hit and get in firing position. Some stuff if you don't have your rifle. But most of it is because they really want to ingrain in the soldier, your rifle is with you 24 hours a day. So if you get attacked, use the rifle. Okay?
Makes sense.
Now, if you get assigned to computers or helicopters or tanks, you don't really learn any more Krav Maga. So to be honest with you, very little. But if you go into a special operations, special forces type unit, yes, you're learning more Krav Maga of all different types. And then after the army, Krav Maga is a big book with many chapters. And we can specialize for situations. So for instance, a soldier with his gear, with his situation, there's Krav Maga. For a policeman, for his situation, his gear, there's Krav Maga. For Secret Service or airline security, there's Krav Maga for their situations and their gear. So it's very compartmentalized like that, you could say. Yeah, specific like that. But yet, what I got to hear and see some of recently in Israel is just unbelievable. The way in the army they're incorporating, mixing high technology with Krav Maga, making the soldier something Imi could have never imagined, because this was before the scope of technology.
Yes,
so to see what they're doing, and I can't speak too much on exactly what they're doing, but it's unbelievable to see how they take, like it was explained to me in a way from an officer that they can't keep. Excuse me.
Do you need some water, Rick?
I can use some water.
A bit of water, please.
They can't keep reinventing the wheel. In other words,
Right.
technique is technique.
Right.
They believe they've come up with techniques that are functional, efficient, and they can't be improved any better. So how could you improve? What can you improve? The person doing the technique, the soldier. So they've mixed now high technology with the training that is making, and it's a scientific study now in the Army. Thank you so much. Where scientifically they have data showing how this benefits the soldiers and how their abilities are becoming almost superhuman in their cognitive reaction, how they see things faster, recognize things faster, react faster. It's really ingenious.
So the concepts and the principles of Krav Maga
Is the same.
are the same, but the
so-
practitioner, you're making the practitioner
Better.
better.
And that's the future I see of Krav Maga. Is
Amazing.
the technique is technique, but the way you train and the way you're adapting it is different. And that's what's ingenious of Krav Maga.
How it keeps evolving. This is great. Is there anything you want to add in reference to this conversation as a whole? What would you like to see happen with Krav Maga in the civilian community?
What I'd like to see in reality are two different things. and I'm not a dreamer, as you know. I'm a realist.
You're
So I
all
could tell you,
businessmen.
I could tell you my dreams, but they don't mean bupkis. Okay. The reality is this: there's a lot of organizations. There's people all the time popping up, making instructors. I don't even know who they are. I don't even know their background.
Right.
I'd like to see some type of authenticity proven, so you have to, again, all these organizations.
Like a
and this-
governing body of some sort?
But it's not going to happen. In a way, and I had this discussion the other day with some of my students, it's something to think about, and even think about us doing. It's this. Because of all this different organizations and infighting, and my Krav Maga is better than your Krav Maga, and you don't do it right, and all this stuff. Unfortunately, we don't have any put up or shut up situation. That's why people can talk.
Right.
Again, I know a lot of the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu
well
people,
said.
and one thing that I've learned from them is they got a very simple way of settling this. Come on the mat.
Yeah.
Let's see. We don't have that.
Right.
Okay? And it's funny because in a way, Krav Maga is not a sport, and we know that, but in a way, like judo became a sport. It was evolved from combat jiu-jitsu, which was for war. But they made it a sport. Now there's competition in judo. It's become a big sport. In a way, maybe, and we've even talked about experimenting with this. I don't know if, I would say Imi would understand because of the situation. Have competitive Krav Maga with certain rules. Again, we wear groin protection, no thumb to the eyes, no biting, ear gouging. Some little few things. Everything else we can go. Up fighting, down, wherever, because we do it all. Even weapon against weapon with judges, qualified judges.
Wow.
In other words, maybe to try a tournament.
Maybe testing their techniques or
Put up or shut up.
put your money where your mouth is.
Put your
right?
money where your mouth is.
You
Come on the mat. And with limited rules so nobody ends up in a hospital.
Right.
Have some competitive Krav Maga tournaments. So now all these organizations could come and say, let's see your Krav Maga. Let's see what as well as not just fighting, but self-defense techniques, weapons defenses, scenario defenses, other exercises, and have qualified people as judges, just like in other tournaments, okay?
Right.
And it's funny to hear me hear myself say this because for 36, 40 years I've been saying Krav Maga is not a sport. It's, but
Well, because of all the people that are out there now, there's got to be some kind of
and I would say
weeding out
it still has to keep it the way it is.
Sure.
But also, I would like to see some competitive type of tournaments so we can separate who's who and what's what. And what's interesting is the same thing in reverse is happening with Gracie's Jiu-Jitsu, because Jiu-Jitsu is originally for war, okay? And now when you hear Jiu-Jitsu, what do you think? It's a competitive sport. Mm-hmm. They have tournaments, they have everything's on a mat, okay? It's become a huge worldwide sport. But Rickson Gracie, who's one of the top in the world, started now a new division, self-defense division of Jiu-Jitsu, because they've gone the same way we did in opposite directions. He realizes his love has become too much of a sport. And he says when Jiu-Jitsu black belts get a gun pulled on them or a knife pulled on them and they don't know what to do, something's wrong. Okay? And he's right. So I find myself and Rickson kind of meeting in the middle where he feels his Jiu-Jitsu has become too much of a sport and he wants to bring back the self-defense aspect that his father had created. And I feel like Krav Maga is too much of the self-defense aspect and not enough sport in the sense where we don't have competition, so you can't separate the bullshit from the reality.
Right.
That's why I like to see that. So in a way, we're kind of two polar opposites coming like this, and I find it fascinating.
Yeah, the evolution.
Yes.
It's awesome. You were just in Israel, something I definitely want to talk about. You are an American Krav Maga pioneer, one of the first to bring Krav Maga to the United States. I'm indebted to what you've done and what you've given me and my students. But not only an American Krav Maga pioneer, you were just in Moscow.
I'm a Russian Krav Maga pioneer.
Which speaks to your shirt. What does that say on your shirt there?
This is the shirt
Chief
in
musician?
Hebrew, Krav Maga Israeli, and this is in Russian, Krav Maga Israelian Academia, which I don't speak Russian, but I'm learning. But yes,
Tell us about your trip to Russia.
by situations, people you meet, you know, by situations. A student of mine brought me last summer to Moscow. I'd never been. And he arranged, just with some friends of his classes, and everybody really, really liked Krav Maga, and I met some good people, and I was pleasantly surprised about Russia and Moscow. You know, we have these preconceived ideas of places, but I was really impressed. And then we decided, my student and I decided, you know what? There's a need for this here. Not only in the Jewish community, in the community itself, because number one, Russians love martial arts. They have some of their own Sambo and other things they developed. Sambo's very similar in the evolution of it as Krav Maga, meaning that it came out of the Russian military. So they were very receptive to it. So what we did was we applied for a business visa. So I have now an official business visa in Russia.
Congratulations.
And I wouldn't do it otherwise. And I just went back and we did 2 3-day seminars each, as well as some other things. And people just love it. And I had it was getting cold. I'll admit that. I'm not used to the cold. But I like it a lot, and I really, there is some Krav Maga in Russia, not much. And so now we have plans to really evolve it.
Awesome.
In Moscow, as well as some other places.
It's called the Israeli Krav Maga Academy. Academia.
Yes, Moscow. And so I'm already have people practicing as we speak to become instructors under me when I go back in the fall, in the spring. and to do more, and we're going to expand it, and I like it. And again, it's an adventure. You know, I don't speak the language, I can't read, but again, through technology, I'm finding my way around, and I like the experience. You know, it's really, I've met some wonderful people.
Yeah.
You know, like, again, the preconceived things you hear about Russia, and you know, they're the enemy and this and that, and they love them. Everywhere you go, everything's American music. When they hear me speaking English, people stop me in the street and just want to speak English and practice.
It sounds mutual too. Like you're loving those people.
No. I found some really lovely people, warm.
That's great.
Again, the things that you hear the opposite about, that's why it's nice firsthand to find out for yourself.
Sure.
But again, bringing Krav Maga there is a goal of mine, and now I have a lot of people there that want to assist me with that dream, and I think we can really do some big things in Russia with Krav Maga.
I think,
and then you'll come one day.
I would love that. I think Imi would be proud of you. I'm sure he never imagined you'd be teaching Krav Maga over in Russia.
No, he did.
Did
We
he?
talked about
Did
it.
he?
That's what I'm saying.
Wow.
He knew 40 years ago. He knew. He told me. He said, right now it's lat, little by little, slowly.
In Hebrew?
Lat, slowly. But he told me, he says, all the martial arts in the world one day going to recognize Krav Maga because we specify self-defense. First, he says, most of them don't. They become sport, they become show, we specifically go for self-defense. And again, that was the thing. Now, like I said, all these new pop-ups and things, they've gotten away from that. And one thing that kind of irks me too, I'll be honest with you, is a lot of people have, because Krav Maga comes from the Israeli military,
Yes, sir.
they have made, not in Israel, in other places in America, they've made Krav Maga almost like a vigilante system where they're shooting and acting like cowboys, and the shooting is separate. Tactical shooting is one thing. It's nothing to do with Krav Maga. Okay? Imi did not.
Another angle just to make some more money, to make it
I
look
think,
hardcore.
I think, or pretend that they're, you know.
Something.
And listen, I shoot and I know shooting, and there's certain things I'm not saying don't learn it, but it's not part of Krav Maga, and they're acting like it is. We do gun takeaway, everything until it becomes a hot weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but then you're encouraged to learn.
Right, but
okay?
somewhere else.
Somewhere else, or listen, again, because a lot of Krav Maga instructors in the Israeli army are also soldiers and shooting instructors, so it overlaps.
Right.
But then you come to America, and a lot of these guys that know minimal Krav Maga, and they go buy a gun, and they're putting things on Facebook. They don't know what they're doing with Krav Maga or with guns, and that's dangerous.
Dangerous, absolutely.
Very dangerous. Okay, and that, you know, I draw the line there, because they're playing with some real dangerous things there.
There's people's lives at stake.
People's lives there.
Blood money.
Okay?
Man.
And, you know, Imi had a saying, the number one rule in Krav Maga is don't get hurt. Okay? And a lot of people have gotten away from that. Even in the Israeli army, they've gotten away from that. A lot of time, they bang each other up. They hurt. Imi had an expression, you can't send a wounded soldier into combat. So you shouldn't hurt each other. You should have respect and training control. And too many times people get hurt in training, and then they can't go out and, civilians get turned off because they have to go to work. How can they go to work with a black eye? And
this isn't for me.
You know, you're not a soldier. You're not, you know, and a soldier can't go to war if he's got a broken arm.
Right.
So it has to be controlled.
Train safely.
Absolutely.
I remember the seminar that I saw. I'm not sure what year it was with you and Imi, when Imi's doing a Krav Maga demonstration, and you were
I believe it was
assisting.
84.
Was it 84? And Alan
Yes.
Feldman's in
Yes.
in that as well. I remember Imi saying that no one's ever sent his child to him to learn Krav Maga, and he's given the child back hurt.
That's right.
He said, I believe he said, you know, how can I come here and ask you to send your grandchildren to me to learn
That's
Krav
right.
Maga, and I send them back to you, her?
That's right.
It's precedent that we do this
Absolutely.
safely.
He was
and
very adamant
can't
about that.
exactly quote him, but
That's right.
it made a huge impact on just how he was reaching out to the people, and his sense of humor. I know if anyone ever gets the opportunity to see some footage of Imi, and specifically that video, to see a younger Rick Blitzstein 36 years ago.
Yeah.
It was something else. It was very cool to see. Anything you'd like to add? I mean,
Well, listen,
I'm so honored.
in reminiscing and talking about
Yes,
these
sir.
things, you know, to think like 40 years have gone by, like, you know, they say life goes fast, and it sure does, man. Whew. But to think like that, and then these history, and you know, that's why you know, we're all limited here. That's why, you know, how many people can say that they started something 40 years ago and still love it and still do it?
Wow.
That's me.
Yeah.
I love what I do, and I'm blessed to have that. You know, I know people, they hate their job, and they, you know, they do it because they have bills to pay. Okay, I get it. I've been in that situation too. But teaching Krav Maga and spreading the gospel, as they say,
What has it done for you?
is
right?
it's rewarding. And I see now, like this conversation, I think my role in all of this has become more to pass on exact technique and philosophy of Imi, because not enough people do that anymore. I mean, even a lot of people that trained with Imi are too busy promoting themselves.
I understand.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
they're this and they're that. Like, excuse me, who did you learn that from?
Right.
You know, they're too busy worrying about promoting themselves and
Yes, sir.
making money, and, you know, taking this and that. It's not all about that. And I see my role in all this, because not a lot of people that learned from Imi are still teaching. There's some, not a lot. And a lot of those people are too busy promoting themselves. So I think that even more and more I need to really go through documents that I have and footage that I have, and really kind of bring this full circle in a way back
Sure.
to Imi.
I think that'd be great.
Back to Imi, because he was that. His body's dead, his soul's not dead.
No.
We all keep his soul alive.
Yes.
And that is still real important to me. And that is done properly and with the right goal of intention. The technique is done properly, and as well as your goals are in the right place.
Sure. My opinion of what's going on, and I'm a nobody, just kind of making my mark as a small business owner, blue collar guy that wanted to do something different with his life, and I learned from a person that didn't learn Krav Maga the right way, but I didn't know any different, and I see the uneducated public with. Not that they're uneducated, but uneducated in Krav Maga and what Krav Maga is. And everyone's so quick to go to the internet, and you go to the internet, you look something up, and whoever the leading organizations may be, they're going to tell you the story that they want you to know, because it's going to profit them. And it's taken me several years to discover you, and to learn of your experience, and I named my business American Krav Maga, and I remember when I saw your name, and you know, it was one of the first Americans to bring Krav Maga to America and Imi to America. I thought, I was almost ashamed. I'm like, how can I be American? How can I call myself American Krav Maga and not know Mr. American Krav Maga? The organization that I was once with, and many organizations, now this is just my opinion, I see them really minimizing the origin of the need for Krav Maga. That Krav Maga was created out of necessity for the protection of a people. I know Imi wanted it to be exposed, everybody to be exposed to it, that it wasn't just for the Jewish people. My own personal story, without getting too much into it though, I got away from my heritage. I come from a Jewish family, and my grandparents were all escaped the Nazis. Most of my family was killed in the Holocaust. When I first learned about Krav Maga, and this is what the Israelis were doing, I thought, you know, I want to learn this because in a way it was a connection back to my people. I wasn't raised in a religious family, and this had nothing to do with religion or Israeli politics. It had to do with, I just wanted to be a part of something that was part of my heritage, and I wanted an outlet for my a healthy physical outlet, and I've discovered that Krav Maga was what I needed, and then I saw that, hey, there's a business opportunity here. Everybody else, you know, these guys are making businesses out of it. Maybe this is something I can do. It's taken me a couple of years to realize that Krav Maga was not created to be a business arrangement. The Krav Maga was not created to exploit the suffering of a people and minimize their experience. This is just my personal opinion. I just noticed that, you know, they might say a few sentences about Imi and how he was the leader of the Israeli Defense Forces, but there's, I just always felt like they were kind of sweeping the Holocaust and the persecution of the Jews under the rug because it was bad for business. And it's not about, you know, this isn't Holocaust education. It's not a Jewish class. It's not about promoting Israel. You know, they're making Krav Maga as a self-defense system, and everybody wants to put their own name and niche on it. But I will, you know, speaking of my personal experience, meeting you this past August for the first time when you came to Glenwood Springs to impart your wisdom and your experience to me and my friends, fellow instructors. You have had a major influence. I had like an epiphany of what I'm supposed to be doing with Krav Maga, and that I'll always be a student first. And I feel like you've led me back to my tribe, so to speak. I'm making this connection of with, you know, my family history and where we came from, and I see the importance of educating my students now as part of my Krav Maga program. And you need to learn about the Holocaust. You need to learn about Imi and what he went through and what he was doing for the people in his community. If you're going to teach us, if you're going to teach it and put my name on it, you know, this is how I feel about it. I feel very strongly about it, and I did. I had the hesitation, the thought of maybe I shouldn't be doing this because I don't know if the people that have been supporting me in my business are down with the idea that I have, and I have some good friends that told me to, you know, you follow your heart and you go with what you feel is right, and that's what I plan on doing, and that's a huge part of this interview.
This was born out of the Holocaust. We have to always remember that.
Thank you,
and it
sir.
came out of necessity.
I mean, let's honor the victims and the survivors.
It's still being used to prevent another Holocaust. That's where the past is the past. Okay, the present is the present. And being a Jew, being, you know, also Israeli ties, listen, anti-Semitism is on the way up all over the world. I've had some instances recently.
Yeah, you're just telling me we don't
In Israel, always people are trying to, but we're the chosen people. We've been chosen for a reason. I can't tell you the reason, but we're here, and Krav Maga is a big part of it. Trust me, big part of it. God touched Imi, and through that, we're all touched from it. And yes, I mean, it comes from Israel, and it was developed for that. But again, Imi was adamant that it's not just for Jews; it's for everyone who's a good citizen. Okay, and it's to make friends for Israel and for Jewish like people. That. He used to go like that, yes. So we'd be together, yes. He would say. But, and I think it's important to remember history and where this came from. You know, literally like a phoenix, it came out of the ashes. Okay? Imi lost his whole family. You know, he escaped a criminal. He never saw his father, his brother again. Okay? They were burned alive. Wow. So imagine, you know.
And his father was a respected policeman.
Absolutely. The people he protected turned on him and killed him. Okay? So these are the things too Imi had to live with the rest of his life that most people don't know.
Right. He didn't come across as a bitter man or humble and loving and funny, but
he was. But listen, he was a human being.
Yes, sir.
And you know, if you sit here and talk about the history and bring up his family and stuff, listen, you know, it hit a nerve. They killed his whole family.
Yes, sir.
Okay? So, I mean, he's been there, done that. And, you know, he and his thing was, you know, the Holocaust happened, we have to never forget. But we have to live so another one doesn't happen. Because a lot of people would like it to, that's for damn sure.
Absolutely.
Okay? So, again, this is the beauty of Krav Maga. We have a mission. Most people live their lives with wandering with no purpose in life. You know, well, and I don't mean that in a bad way. You know, I have friends, all type of friends, but you know, I have a friend who's an accountant. He makes good money. He hates going to work numbers. He's, you know, like this. He looks at me, he's like, I would just love to trade places with you, man. You travel, you meet people, you know, you're passionate about what you do. I said, I've been lucky that way.
Yes.
I've done other things in my life. I still do. I don't just teach Krav Maga. I still do. But for me, it's a blessing. It's been a blessing, you know, and meeting Imi and the whole history, it's been my mission in life, you know. Someone once told me that as a goal in life, you should imagine, do this now. Imagine being like a fly on a wall at your own funeral. Who's going to be there? What are they going to say about you? And what's going to be written on your grave? Imagine that.
Yeah.
We don't do that. We don't project that way. When you think that way in the future, it changes what you do today. Trust me.
Like that. I read on one of these Krav Maga forums, Alan Feldman made a comment that he was stuck in this. I guess he had school in Philadelphia, and he said that he's in this smelly, sweaty gym, looking at these ugly mugs, and Rick Blitzstein's on the beach somewhere in Miami training Victoria's Secret models. He goes, I'm doing something wrong. And I read that, and I was laughing. I was in my little house in Colorado, and thinking of you, and you're a slick man, and a good man, and my little boy who's 4 loves you. Your Uncle Rick and little Smedrick. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, likewise, man.
Thank you so much.
Likewise.